I think... Hello, cat. Go. Go on. Go. Go. Go, kitty. Go. Sorry. Hello everyone, this is Bentley, and as you can tell by this table today, we're down in the fish room and we're going to talk about the Tidal series of filters by Seachem. Now I have a Tidal 110 box, I have a Tidal 75 in my hand. This is just a matter of, I have more of these boxes lying around, and this is probably the bigger sizes are a little easier to see the parts. But they range all the way from the 35 up to the 110. So, with that being said, let's tear this thing apart and look at what we're dealing with before we talk about its benefits and why it might be better than some of the filters you're normally using. With a little internet magic, this thing will be done. Like magic, we have this thing disassembled. So let's start with the simple stuff. You kind of have a whole bag of parts here, but it's pretty simple like any hang-on back filter. You have your storage media tray, and with that will come a little thing of media and this blue sponge. And you'll notice right away there's this weird shape, and you see it in the sponge too, that goes to this filter. And if we were to put this back in there, this can leave you kind of a problem. If you look in there, right, you have this weird small space here that I think is a flaw in this design, but it's minor in the grand scheme of things. That tray is going to drop in here to the top. And you notice there's this nice little locking clip that I can move there that holds the tray in. On the lid, this might seem simple, but at the same time, you have this little pop-up blue bit here. If we look from the top, you'll see a little better. That will indicate when it's time to clean your filter. So it's basically just a little float that determines flow, and as more water is getting higher in the filter, that pops up and tells you it's time to clean your filter out. On the main body, just as a note, like to the side, my cat's here as usual, you've got this little bit here that holds the cord in to kind of make it a little cleaner. There is a clip that comes with it that hooks on the side here to hold a heater. I hate those things. I don't ever use them on the ones I have. And then up top here you have this bright blue dial that's your flow. And all this does is it controls a little gate valve down here that opens and closes and lets more water in because the tube has less restriction. You have the pump here. Rainbow's playing around in the tank beside me. What I both like and don't like about this pump, I like that it actually is in the water. And we'll explain that in the pros in a little bit, but I don't like that it's in the water. And then you have this bottom, or rather, before we get to the bottom piece, you've got a skimmer here. There's no way to gate this off built into the filter, and that's important. Keep that in mind. But you have a built-in skimmer. Then you have this piece, which is going to come over the top of this housing. And this is where it would clip your heater right here. And then you finally have your tube. Now, like most of the intake tubes, it's got a little strainer built in. This is also collapsible. I mean, we can sit here and collapse it, and it gets smaller or longer. It makes a little clicky noise. And there's a bunch of different graduations on here if you wanted to get an exact size based on your tank. Each one of them has this. It doesn't matter that much. I always have mine all the way down. You could have yours all the way up. It's all personal preference. So with that, you kind of get the fully constructed Tidal, right? Very simple. You got this big black box. You can see this thing's basically the size of my hand. And if we look from the side profile, go this way, sorry. This way, this side profile, this is going to sit inside your tank. So why is that good and why is that bad? Well, why is it bad? It can be ugly. Aesthetically pleasing, a lot of people want to hang on back because it's very minimally invasive in the tank. It's usually just this return here that's at the top of your water or just barely in the water. This big, bulky thing in your tank is kind of ugly. But, unlike the Aquaclear, when you go to do a water change, if you turn this thing off and you turn it back on, because the pump is already in the water, it will self-prime and just kick off and go start it right again. No issues. Also, you don't have to have a bunch of water in the back of the system itself for this pump to have enough water to start priming the filter when you put it in. I would generally advise you do it. It just makes it faster, but you don't have to. So, one other neat thing about this is that this pump is kind of smart enough that if it runs dry long enough, it will shut itself off. And when it gets wet, it detects it, it will turn itself back on and start kicking. So you don't have to unplug or turn off your filter doing a water change. However, remember that skimmer? This lovely part here. I know it's a black box, it's kind of hard to see. But this skimmer right here, the minimum water level is set to right here at the bottom of the skimmer. Because there's no gate to close this, if there's no water coming through the skimmer, it has issues in that it makes an extremely loud sucking noise. And as much as I would love to torture you guys with that sound, I'm not going to. I think that's a little cruel. Now, what I do like about this weird thing is that if you look at the profile of the media box, we've looked at the front that's going to be in your tank, but you see it's very tall and not very deep. You know, an Aquaclear is going to come out to here. It's a big, broad box, and it's not very deep. This can fit in a smaller space behind your tank. It doesn't need as much room to fit its media box. With that being said, it's a funky shape. You've got this curve kind of going here, and you can see it, especially in the lid, right? We look at the lid, if I set the filter down, and you can see there, it's nice and square through here, but it's got this curve. And that translates into the media bin, right? We've looked at this before, with this weird cutout on the side. It's kind of hard to fit media in here, but this is where the water is initially coming through, is in this area from the pump, and then it's cycling through this zone. So it creates a little kind of strange pocket. Now, I found some solutions around this with just some smaller bags of custom-built media. Well, not custom-built, but I use bio rings. I use the small-size bio ring in a smaller bag, and I can get those into that pocket. And you could do this with, pantyhose, for example. If you have some old used pantyhose, you get them nice and clean. You can make them thinner, not as much biomedia in them, and put them in there. Or you could, in theory, buy these sponges that Seachem includes, but you'll notice this thing's not very thick. It's not like the Aquaclear, which is, this big. It's this big block. You can buy these, though, and they're two for, I think it's $7 or $8 to get these in the 75 and the 110 size. They're pretty cheap. I'd imagine they're similarly cheap there. And you could just stack a bunch of these custom-cut sponges into this box and then put a little, filter floss or, whatever your custom kind of polishing pad of choice is, if you wanted to cut it to make sure it fits this, in the top. And I would almost suggest doing that if you're not too worried about having some good bio-ring media. Sponges will have a lot of surface area. They're going to hold a lot of bacteria. It's pretty safe to do so. I haven't tried that yet. That is what this filter is going to do. I'm going to pack this thing with nothing but these little blue sponges, and then a small bit of a filter material that I use and will be used in some of my sumps. If you guys watch Corvus Oskin, it's the same stuff he uses in all his sumps, that blue and white half and half. It's great. It's cheap. You get these giant rolls. But cutting it for these, because I cut them for my 110s that are on my 90 gallon and some of my other tanks, cutting that stuff to fit these perfectly is a pain. It sucks. I cut them in batches. It takes quite a long time. That gives me a bunch of filter pads for it, but I would rather just have these pre-cut ones that I can just pull out, rinse them out real quick like I would a sponge filter, put them back in. So I'm going to test those long-term in here, because I'm going to be curious if I see any major differences between when I pack this with some biomedia. So that being said, we've got the basics. We've got some of the cons, right? Loud sucking noise if the water gets too low. Giant, ugly black box that's going to sit in your tank. Also, this, I hate to rag on it a little bit, but this, bright blue that's here is kind of an eyesore compared to the rest of it. I wish it was all just uniform in one color. So let's talk some of the pros. Number one, you have two flow regulators. So if you want to do mostly skimming, you could block off the bottom entirely, or you can open it up and get from both. Up here, you can control how much flow. You'll actually get more gallon per hour flow, or at least that has been my experience. It seems like it's a slightly higher flow rate out of this pump and this filter than you will an Aquaclear. So for those of us who have fish that like a little more flow, like rainbow fish, this might be a better option. Two, it doesn't take as much space from the front to the back, and it still has a very large media bin. I think for people that have some space concerns that would look at something like an Aquaclear, but don't want the hassle of cleaning out a canister filter, want something as easy as a hang-on back, this is a really good option to look at. The other major thing that I will say is that this, because it's not, so like an Aquaclear has a super broad output, right? It puts a lot of water out in this kind of really long, I think it's goes out to about here. This is a smaller natural face, so it's not quite as loud when it's running. You can hear maybe lightly in the background if I don't clean this audio up too much. You will hear the filter that's running over here, which is a Penguin 350B, but you won't hear the filters running over here. Same water level in the tanks. It's coming in at the same point. Those Tidals are quiet when you keep the water level high. They make almost no noise, have very good flow, a very nice deep media box. Yeah, it's a little weirdly shaped, but it's got lots of room. It turns off on its own if you really have to. It will restart on its own during water changes, so when all you have to do is turn it on. You don't have to pour a little water in the back and make sure it does the slowly sucking the water up the tube dance that you have to do with an Aquaclear. But at the same time, the media capacity is probably slightly lower than an Aquaclear. Not by much. I mean, I haven't done the math on how big this chamber is to figure out exactly how much this fits compared to the Aquaclear. Just knowing how big Aquaclears are, there's a little bit more room. However, I think the throughput rate with how much this pushes and the way that this bin is designed, you can get the water a little bit better through. It's just, instead of this big open box, it kind of is thinner. It forces a certain path for the water. And you can see it has these notches down here. So it's going to come up through this bottom part here. So it's pumping all its water into this part. This is where I still think this is weird. And then it comes up through here, cycles its way through your media. What I think is the biggest benefit to this filter is actually in its construction. So this black plastic that it has here, I'm going to see if it can get you to see this, but it has some flex. I don't know if you see that, but this flexes. It's still a good high-grade plastic, but it flexes. The Aquaclear is very sturdy, rigid plastic. Now you might think, whoa, sturdy, good. Oh, flexibility is actually going to help us here. It seems cheaper, but this stuff is more durable because small stress impacts aren't going to break the body of your filter. I have seen a number of Aquaclears where, somebody bumps something the wrong way, or it flexes, or it's wedged somewhere, and that one time where you pick it up to move it, or you need to do something, and you wedge it back in, it causes a crack in the body, and now the whole body's gone, and you have to get a new one. So I think that's a big plus. Now let's talk the negatives versus the positives. In the Aquaclear, we don't have the skimmer. We have this big, huge box that's broad, square, simply shaped. Compared to this, where you have the skimmer, you have a little bit better throughput compared to the Aquaclear, but you have this kind of weird shape. However, because it's not as far back, from the front to back, it actually can fit in smaller spaces. So if you put a tank somewhere and realize you need more filtration later and don't want to drain it and find a way to move it, it might be easier to fit this filter compared to an Aquaclear in your space. I will give you a great example. My rainbow community that is over here, I put it in there. I had a little dinky hang-on back, and I added a canister. I wanted to change that hang-on back out because it's a Penguin 350B. It's okay, but there's much better, like the Tidals or the Aquaclears. I actually have it too close to the wall. I can't fit an Aquaclear back there, and even can't fit a Tidal because that Penguin is so small. So I either have to drain this entire tank, move the stand-in tank forward, or just, you know, get another canister, or just be happy with what I have and let the plants do some work, which is what I'm doing. I just make sure that FX6 runs all the time. So I think those are some of your positives and negatives. Let's go to the last part. I've used these filters basically shortly after they came out. And you might be like, everybody's reviewed the Tidal. Who cares? I don't care about it. I don't think enough people had time to sit and really test them. Now, Corey from Aquarium Co-op has. And his biggest qualm was the noise that this thing makes. Also, if you compare the price, these are a little more expensive. An example, I think most of you are probably going to aren't going to necessarily use the Tidal 110s, or maybe not even the 75s. But the 50-gallon one might be something you'll use on an overstock 20 long, or 20 tall, or 29. I think those, you know, like the 50-gallon range, so like the Aquaclear 50 versus the Tidal 55. The Tidal 55, on average, where I looked, was about $10 more expensive, and that's before shipping. Now, if you get it shipped free, you don't care about shipping. But the difference in this filter, I think the cost doesn't help it. Now, it's been getting better. The prices used to be worse, in that the difference was much higher. You could get like an Aquaclear 110 for, I think, $25 less than the Tidal 110. But there's a few less features, and I think what we need in the end is some innovation. One last thing. I'm sorry, I forgot about this. My favorite features, but in this particular filter, I can't remember where I left the part. Down here, and I'm going to show you some B-roll in one of the tanks so you can see it. On the Aquaclear, you just have this little thing that pops into the bottom, and you have to dial it out, and it's kind of a finicky plastic. This has a big rubber padded, like, kind of ring that twists out, and it has a screw so it perfectly fits whatever size you need to get it nice, flat, and level. So as you'll see, the shot here, we're looking at the 90-gallon rainbow tank, and you can see that thing clear as day, which aesthetically not the prettiest thing, but because it's screwed into the harness at a perpendicular, so it's flat against the tank instead of just friction fitting into the bottom, it's not going to fall out, and more importantly, you have something that can perfect fit your gap instead of kind of guessing and getting close enough. So in the end, I personally own a bunch of Aquaclears. I own several Tidal filters. Which one would I suggest for you to buy, or which one do I like more? It's a toss-up. I like parts of each. I think there is a middle ground that someone will eventually figure out and create and make the best hang-on back on the planet. But in pure experience, I think it comes down to this. If you want slightly higher flow rate and you don't care about some aesthetics, so the big, ugly black box being in your tank, maybe you've got lots of plants you can hide it with or something, I think the Tidal is actually better in that circumstance, as long as you keep your water level high so you don't hear that ugly sucking noise from the skimmer portion not getting enough water. If aesthetics and maybe like having a simpler media bin to put your media in matter more to you, I think the Aquaclear is the better filter. If you're doing it purely on price, whichever you can get cheaper, I think in the end, toe-to-toe, they're very similar products. If you don't care about the aesthetics, if you want purely functional, I think it's a coin flip. I really do. I think these are great filters. Do not get me wrong. I'll grab this box just so that we can look at its pretty shiny packaging. I think Cease, who's the people who actually make this, SICCE, They are the manufacturer, but Seachem is basically the brand that has worked with them to create it. I think they made a really good filter. I think this is a phenomenally good filter. However, it's not enough of a leap between the Aquaclear, which has been the king for so long, to go, there's no way you buy an Aquaclear anymore. The only filter you'd ever buy is a Tidal. It could have been done. This could have been the best hang-on back in decades. But it isn't. It's only about on par. It just has a few small features that make it slightly more interesting. But it has similar negatives that would make you go, I don't know that I need this thing. I think I like my Aquaclear, or I think I like this. In the end, I think it's all about what you really are looking for in your filter. If you want a few extra features, a really obvious thing that's going to tell you, hey, it's time to clean your filter, which helps a guy like me. If you want higher flow rate, it's a little less front to back room so it fits in smaller spaces. I think this filter is fantastic. If you don't care about any of that, you want something that's a little more aesthetically pleasing, a little less intrusive on your tank, I think the Aquaclear is the way to go. Or, plain and simple, if you just want the filter that's cheaper and you're buying purely retail, you're not finding a way to get a deal, the Aquaclear is cheaper. Now, in some cases, it's only about $5 cheaper if you buy it on Amazon. And in that difference, I would say that for $5, the Tidal might be better. But if it's $10 or more, the Aquaclear is probably just worth it. Also, if you want like just a larger sponge and a simpler media tray, because this thing, I will admit, this is the biggest pain. This is the biggest downfall of this entire filter, is this weird media tray. If they had not made it, trying to make it curvy and semi-elegant, I guess is what you would deem this to be, the curvature and all that. I think if you just had a square, narrow profile filter with a good, simple media box, this would probably actually be hands down the better filter. And I know it seems simple, like just the media box and just the ugly black thing hanging in my tank. Well, if that's all you're saying, this is the perfect filter for you. But if you're sitting there going, like, yeah, I don't want that big ugly portion of that filter with that intake in my tank. I'm trying to make it look a little less like it's got a bunch of equipment in it. I want it to see pretty fish and pretty plants, and that's all I see when I look in my tank, and maybe one little intake tube. Well, you probably have a canister filter, don't you? But if you don't, I think that the Tidals are a really great filter, but I don't think they're good enough to dethrone the Aquaclear. Now, that being said, let us say that a great example would be, I had this question with Corey recently. So Corey of Aquarium Co-op asked me, barring price, because the prices have shifted a little bit, they're a little closer now, but they used to be significantly different, which filter would I choose? This one. The Tidal. Especially the 110s. I love the Tidal 110. Now, granted, I have a lot of bigger tanks. You guys know that. But I have a Tidal 110 on a 29-gallon tank. And it's amazing. I would never put an Aquaclear 110 on that thing. But because of the profile of this filter, I can fit this on a 29-gallon cleanly. And I can use that adjustable knob to perfectly level it so that it has good flow the entire time. And that's the 29 that you guys see in the grow room that has the rainbows. We'll cut to that real fast. It's this tank right here. That's a Tidal 110 cranking away on that 29-gallon. And you'll notice the rainbow fish aren't bothered by it. It's good flow, but it's not too much. And I do have it dialed down a little bit. But it's a great filter. And because it's on such a small tank, it's an absolute workhorse and it never clogs up. So, that's my review. I would love to know from you guys, have you tried the Tidal? Have you tried the Aquaclear? Have you tried maybe some other hang-on back filters? What is your favorite hang-on back? Is it the Tidal? Is it this bad boy? Is it the Aquaclear, the king? Maybe you've got some crazy thing I've never heard of that you found somewhere, made in Japan or something like that you love. I would love to see that down in the comments. Maybe you've had experiences with either of the Aquaclears or the Tidals, especially if you've had an experience with both. I would love to hear in the comments your thoughts. Would you pick the Tidal or the Aquaclear? Let's say I'm going to give you a filter for free, either the Tidal or the Aquaclear. Tell me which one. You don't worry about size, just purely, if I'm going to give you one for free, Tidal or Aquaclear. I would love to see the results of that, because I'd be curious, with enough of the reviews that have been out there and enough time for people to try these filters, which one they like better. For me, I think it's the Tidal. I hate to say it, I think it's the Tidal. A lot of people might raise some pitchforks. And you hear me say I hate to say it, because I like the Aquaclear so much, because those things are, I used those back when I was first in the hobby, in college, and before in high school, and even when I was a kid. Aquaclears, for as long as they've been around, I've used them since basically they first kind of came out. It's a great filter. But I think that if you were to take all that away and just go purely on, I'm going to give you a filter between these two, which one do you want? I think I'm taking the Tidal, just because for my personal purposes. I like that little extra flow. I like that narrower profile. And I actually really like the Skimmer, because when I do water changes, I don't have to reprime the thing. Also, it'll tell me when I need to clean it. It's a lot of great features that if we could take an Aquaclear and we could put all those features into it, and maybe some slightly other technological upgrades, I think we would have the perfect hang-on back. But for now, we have to choose. Tidal or Aquaclear? I want to know your guys' opinion. Thank you so much for watching this. If you've liked this, send me a little like. Maybe even a subscribe if you're not a subscriber. I've done lots of product reviews. I plan to do several more. Upcoming, I'll be doing the Zis filter. So that's an air-powered kind of fluid bed with sponge built-in filter that most of you guys probably know from Aquarium Co-op, but some other places have it. Kind of a neat little thing. I'm going to give you my full breakdown on what I think is great and what I think is bad about it. And you've probably seen some of my lighting reviews, some stuff like that. I do all sorts of stuff on plants, rainbow fish, and all sorts of random projects around my house. So if you watch this and you enjoyed it, you're not subscribed, think about subscribing. I'd really appreciate it. If you liked it, at least throw a little thumbs up. If you didn't like it, throw the thumbs down. Maybe even hit that thumbs down twice to let me know you definitely didn't like it. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. And stay awesome.